Good evening, everyone. We're going to reconvene the Brattleboro Select Board meeting. We had entered into executive session and we are not taking any action. So, John, I'm going to check in now. Has this meeting been properly warned?
Yes, Ian, it's been properly warned.
Great. All right. So, and I'm sorry, BCTV, are we good to go?
Are we good to go? Restart with the same.
Okay, so as I've just been told, the meeting has been properly warned. We're reconvening this regularly scheduled Brattleboro Select Board meeting. Today is October 3rd, 2023, and it's just a little after 6:15. So I'm going to look first to the Select Board for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
Thank you very much, Peter. Peter's made a motion to approve the minutes of September 19th, 2023. Any discussion on that, board?
No.
Seeing none. Any from the public? Seeing none. In that case, all those in favor of approving the minutes of September 19th, 2023?
Aye.
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 Patrick?
I'm not voting.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hate to tell you, you don't get a vote on
You as
this.
selectman, that's a problem. But I am noticing that the ASL interpreter is not interpreting.
Uh-oh.
And I'm wondering if
And the ASL interpreter's hand is up.
Maybe she can't hear.
Oh, not this again.
I just wanted to let you all know you're still muted on the Zoom.
Yeah, we are muted.
That's correct.
can you hear us when we talk now?
No, we're muted.
No, you're muted.
It is muted. I can see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Just unmuted. It's muted on the screen, Patrick.
It's muted.
Yes, sir. It is.
Is it?
It's always.
It is?
on the
Oh,
screen.
okay.
It's
I should not meddle.
reliant upon BCTV to. Can you
Okay, you can hear us now?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay, brief update. We have voted to approve the minutes of September 19th, and the motion passed 5-0. I also told the public before this meeting started that I was going to start exactly at 6:15, and because I said that, we're now starting late. That moves us into agenda item 3, which is chair remarks. So I just have one remark this evening. I think as everyone's aware, they heard the news about Sam's closing next year in April. And I don't really have anything profound to say other than just to also express my own sort of feeling of loss for that news. When I first started coming to Brattleboro, because my wife's family lives down here, my mother-in-law would say that if you can't find it at Sam's or Brown and Roberts, then you don't need it. And I have a lot of really important memories of Brattleboro that were at Sam's, buying Christmas gifts and a really important pair of boots for my wife before we were married, because on a previous date, she had pointed them out in the window, and I had taken a mental note and then went back and got them. And so, yeah, it's a real loss, and I'm not really capable of putting a silver lining on that. But what I can say is I feel confident in this select board, in this administration, and more importantly in our community in Brattleboro, that we're going to move forward, and our town's going to continue to evolve, and we're going to continue to have a vibrant downtown, and we're going to work with everyone to get there. So that's all I have to say. And with that, actually, one other update. We did the kind of contingent of the town went up to South Burlington last week to the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns Town Fair, and it was a really good opportunity for us to hear about kind of what's happening legislatively for the league, and then also to talk to other municipal leaders about both the challenges that they're facing, and some of them are very similar to the ones that Brattleboro faces, and their ways of addressing them and their successes. And it was really good. I appreciate the town manager, assistant town manager, the police chief, the finance director, and the HR director all came up, and I really appreciated that representation of Brattleboro. We really showed up in force, and it's a way that Brattleboro is seen by the rest of the community of municipal governments. And so I thought that was a really successful trip, and I'm grateful for them taking the time to get up there. So thank you.
Yeah.
So at that case, I'm going to move over to agenda item 4, which is manager's comments.
Yeah, I have a few things tonight. First of all, I wanted to let everyone know that the revised Human Services Committee application for funding is now available on the town's website under the Human Services Committee page. Human service funding is for requests from nonprofit organizations that serve the needs of Brattleboro residents on issues like food security, housing stability, disability support, recovery and harm reduction relating to addiction, senior and youth health, BIPOC and LGBTQ support and safety, financial support during hardship, veteran services, environmental sustainability, mental health, and the well-being of immigrants and refugees, as well as any other services that address the pressing needs of Brattleboro residents. So organizations who expressed interest received an application and instructions via email, but there is a question and answer session open to the public, and that is scheduled for Wednesday, October 18th at 4 p.m. at the Selectboard meeting room and over Zoom. And finally, all human services applications are due by Wednesday, November 8th at 5 p.m. And please feel free to direct any questions to Executive Assistant Jessica Stickler at jstickler@brattleboro.org. Wanted to mention that an upgrade to 100% LED lighting is expected to begin next week across 6 town buildings, and this should save us roughly $10,000 a year in electricity costs. Cold planing and paving operations will begin Monday on the Flat Frost Elm Street project, so traffic delays and impacts to parking can be expected. So next week. Details of the contractor's schedule are being finalized right now, and DPW will publish a press release in the coming days to give residents and visitors more information about that. I wanted to announce that the Village Center designation was successfully renewed for West Brattleboro Village by the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Benefits of that designation include eligibility for historic and code improvement tax credits and priority consideration on state grants. Library Director Star Electronica wanted me to remind everyone that October 1st through 7th is officially Freedom to Read Week, although unofficially every week is Freedom to Read Week in Brattleboro. So go over to the library to find out more about that. Finally, I wanted to note with sadness the passing of Charlie Robb Sr., a West Brattleboro farmer, who was a longtime town meeting member, and he was also on call as a firefighter for the town for many years. So that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 5, which is select board comments and committee reports. Board members, anyone wish to speak this evening? Daniel doesn't indicate with a hand, but a little chin raise, which I respect.
Thank you, Ian. Let's hope I'm speaking the truth here. Yes, it's true. On the town's website today, brattleboro.org, you will see a survey for your kind of preferences or ideas about how to use ARPA money. I think it's really important that as many people as possible weigh in on that to guide the town as it begins its FY25 budget process and to encourage us to have, I don't know, an open mind and diverse opinions on what to use these one-time funds for.
Great. Thank you very much, Daniel. Other board members? Franz?
Thank you, Ian. It's my great pleasure this evening to announce that at long last, the much-awaited return of office hours is upon us, so that people who would like to come and talk to me about anything, but probably mostly town affairs, can do so on Wednesday and Friday. On Wednesday, I will be at the Works Cafe on Main Street from 4:30 to 6:30. And that's the exact same place I'll be Friday morning from 8 till 10. So Wednesday, 4:30 to 6:30, Friday, 8 to 10. Just show up and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I really look forward to some very good conversations, which is what has characterized office hours in the past. And I'd like to see many new faces there. So please show up. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Franz. Other board members which wish to speak on board comments, committee reports? No? Nope. Okay. In that case, we're going to move on to agenda item 6, which is the public participation. So, because I love always getting to see new faces. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, regularly warned agenda this evening. And it's also an opportunity for a member of the public to request that an item from the consent agenda be pulled, which is something that the Selectboard does at the next item when we're considering the consent agenda. So with that, Jim Levinson, I see your name or your hand up there, and I am aware that you've got a little. Oh, okay.
It's not a pizza after all.
Thank you.
Oy vey.
Very much.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Nice.
Greetings, friends. I'm delighted that Compassionate Brattleboro can continue the tradition of annual reports to the Select Board, which were interrupted by COVID. For those of you who may not be familiar with this initiative, the town voted in 2017 to become part of the International Charter for Compassion, 150 cities and towns around the world. The Select Board then ratified the decision, and Peter Elwell invited a group of citizens to form a group, Compassionate Brattleboro, to help convert word into deed. Our hope in these few minutes is that in addition to updating you on what's happening, we will be able to elicit your priorities relating to compassion and your sense of whether we should keep at it, and if yes, how we can best be of use. You each have before you, and there's a copy circulating in the group, the booklet, Brattleboro is a Compassionate Town, which we put together with the town, Chamber of Commerce, and the Brattleboro Area Interfaith Leadership Alliance. Thanks to Callista and now Seth, there's also a charter section on the town website, which contains information on just about everything that we do. And we have a website, compassionatebrattleboro.org. As I go through our current activities, please jump in at any point with comments or questions. Let me begin with the activity that generated the most attention at our last presentation, our bringing together folks in the community across political divides. We call the project Compassion in Common because we always begin with not with what divides us, for example, guns, immigration, abortion, but with concepts that we share, like compassion. We take on tough topics, but with a superb facilitator and what we call active listening. At the end, folks often want to do it again. I wonder if some of you on the Select Board or some of you gathered here might have ideas on local topics that could benefit from such sessions, and indeed whether some of you might like to participate. A second activity is our sister communities. Many towns in New England have sister communities, most of them in Europe. Ours are in El Salvador, Haiti, Kenya, India, and 2 Native American communities. Many of you passed coming in here the beautiful signboard with the names and locations and symbols of our 7 sister communities, and that will be placed at the future train station. A third activity is our Brattleboro Area Unsung Hero Awards. Awards in recent years have included Brattleboro dentists and doctors who have helped families in need here and in low-income countries, volunteers of the Community Asylum Seekers Project, the volunteers who helped welcome and settle in our new neighbors from Afghanistan, and the Afghans themselves, plus a large number of COVID period unsung heroes. This year's award went to Peter and Mary Alice Amadon. A fourth activity is our School Kindness Initiative. Compassionate Brattleboro collected stories of kindness activities from all the schools in the area and put together a report. I can send it to any of you. The school board then asked if we could select a couple of schools and develop a grade-by-grade school kindness model, which could then become a model for the entire state. The schools which stepped up forward for this are the Guilford and Putney Central Schools. To assist them in this effort, we hope to recruit a couple of AmeriCorps volunteers. And the kindness we hope to instill extends beyond kindness to other humans. We hope, for example, to get the kids to distribute and plant essential seeds needed to fill critical gaps in the ecosystem. We're working on this with a conservation commission. And we hope that the AmeriCorps volunteers will also help organize classroom exchanges with our sister communities and raise some funds so we can organize some actual student exchanges. A fifth activity, I see star here, has been our community conversations on compassion held in the library. These panel discussions with active community participation have dealt with compassion in health, compassion in education, compassion in restorative justice, and lots more. And finally, most of you know about our Compassion Stories of the Month, which appear in the Reformer and the Commons each month. The most recent one, number 74, was about an Afghan artist getting students in local schools to paint murals on topics relating to social justice. I should add that discussions at our meetings take us into lots of other interesting territory. Recent discussions have focused on housing and shelter and also on blue zones. Are you familiar with blue zones? You can Google on it or watch a documentary on Netflix. These are areas of the world where people seem happier, less lonely, have a clearer sense of purpose, and live longer. More laughter, more activity in groups, better eating, more spirituality, and now blue zones are being created. Could Brattleboro become a blue zone? If this is of interest, one or more of you might like to come to a Compassionate Brattleboro meeting for the first part, third Monday of each month at 1 on Zoom, and we can brainstorm together. Thanks again, friends, for giving us the opportunity to report back to you. And any ideas, please email them to me at james.levinson@gmail.com.
Thank you very much, Jim, for the presentation. And can you just spell out your last name so that people will know how to do it?
James.Levinson, Levinson, @gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate to hear all of the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Forward to your thoughts.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Great. Other people wish to speak on public participation, you just get your hand on up. I don't see anyone on Zoom yet. Anyone else wish to speak in the room? Yes.
Are you going to be introducing any information on the public safety?
So that's actually, if you want, that's a regularly warned item. Are you referring to the discussion on community safety?
Yes.
Yeah. So that will be at that item if you want to speak on that. Anyone else? I see Dick DeGray's hand up.
Choose here. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Am I good to go?
Yep, you're good to go.
Thank you. I just wanted to call in and say I just tuned in, so I missed the first 15 minutes of the meeting. And I wanted to extend a thank you to the Borowski family for their contributions to the community. Pal, I never met his dad, but Pal has been an outstanding citizen in Brattleboro for more years than I've known him. He has contributed to the community in more ways than anybody knows. He is a huge supporter of the town, and he certainly is a huge supporter of downtown. And he was one of the people who started BABB when downtown was in one of its weakest moments. And so from me, and I hope a lot of people in our community, we say thank you for running a very successful business for 90 years. That takes a lot of work, and I wish them well. I hope they find a buyer for the Brattleboro store. But if not, so be it. I wish them well in their endeavors with their two other stores. And just thank you to Brad and Pal. They're just great people for the community. I'm sorry for the loss for us as a community as a whole, but we're going to survive, and I wish them nothing but the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dick, for that. All right, I don't see any other hands on Zoom, and I don't see any other hands in the room, so we're going to move forward. Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is the consent agenda. We've got quite a few things on there, so John, if you want to give us a brief rundown.
Yeah, there are 10 items on consent tonight. If the board approves the consent agenda, it will be approving a bid award in the amount of $107,250 to Michael Petrovic Architects PLLC, and that is for design services related to the Living Memorial Park Generational Improvements Project. It will be approving renewal licenses for tobacco and or liquor for 3 establishments: Change Z Food Mart at 228 Canal, Echo Restaurant and Lounge at 6973 Main Street, and the New England House at 254 Marlborough Road. It will be approving a new second-class liquor license for Viking Farms at 580 Canal, which has been reviewed and approved by Police and Fire. It will be authorizing a contract for a fee not to exceed $450,000 with Dufresne Group Consulting Engineers to meet an October 2024 requirement mandated by the EPA as part of the revision of the lead and copper rule, which we have to determine if there's any lead or galvanized pipe in the water service lines. Director of Public Works Dan Tyler says that a large proportion of this cost will be covered by the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund, together with planned expense in the FY24 capital budget. The board will also be authorizing the purchase of 5 sets of rectangular rapid flashing beacons for a cost of $26,900 from Migma Systems, Inc., which will be prioritized for installation at the October Traffic Safety Committee meeting. It will be accepting and appropriating a Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $12,412 from the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance. It will be ratifying the decision to accept the low bid of $3.199 per gallon from Discount Oil of Keene for number 2 fuel oil. And finally, it will be approving a parade permit for the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired's White Cane Awareness Day Parade to be held on October 13th.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Board, anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would take a motion. Franz.
I move that the consent agenda be approved as submitted.
Franz has made a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Okay, we're going to move on to new business agenda item A, which is a community safety review implementation update. And I'm going to invite Mr. Baker up to our table, and I'm going to turn to John to give him a brief introduction and to speak to the memorandum that was presented to the Select Board.
Yes, thanks, Ian. Update on community safety review implementation tonight, which we last discussed back in July. The purpose of this project is to revisit the work of the community safety review and update it to the current situation and needs to guide implementation. As staff were in the early stages of undertaking this project for the town, it came to our attention that Governor Scott's public safety enhancement team was planning an effort in Brattleboro led by Jim Baker. We also realized that this had some overlap with the town's plans. So the governor's priority extends from his 10-point safety plan, public safety enhancement and violence prevention action plan. Mr. Baker is here tonight to inform you further about his initiative. To respect the state's process and not have simultaneous overlapping community safety conversations going on in Brattleboro, we are suggesting that the town's project wait and be informed by the outcomes of the state's effort. Town staff would plan to return to the Select Board with an update that revises the town's approach to community safety review implementation after Mr. Baker's project so that we can incorporate his results into whatever we need to do at that point. In the meantime, town staff will prepare materials for upcoming Select Board meetings that address community safety related topics such as a town legislative agenda, downtown surveillance camera policy, and further update on security services. But really tonight we had hoped that Mr. Baker would be able to share with us some of his past experiences and his plans for what he's planning to do in Brattleboro. And Mr. Baker, if you would introduce yourself a little bit. I wasn't prepared to talk about your background, and I know it's extensive, and I think it would be really informative for the board to hear a little bit about your past work. So,
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate reference to my plan, but I want to emphasize that this is Governor Scott's initiative. I am a consultant to the project through the Agency of Human Services in the Vermont Department of Public Safety. As John introduced, I've been in the criminal justice field in Vermont for almost 50 years. 31 of those years with the state police where I worked, and I actually was the station commander here in Brattleboro, in West Brattleboro, when there was a barracks here back in the mid-90s. I retired from the state police in 2009 and actually was involved in running the police academy for about a year and a half. I was the police chief in Rutland for 3 years. I worked 3 years in Washington, D.C. at the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And I recently, although it's hard to believe it's been almost 2 years, but I finished a stint as the interim commissioner of corrections here in Vermont during the pandemic. And in between, I have a consulting practice where I do a fair amount of consulting. I was asked to become engaged in the governor's 10-point plan. In particular, if people are familiar with the plan, step number 8 talks about applying Vermont's pandemic response model to public safety, social services, mental health, and where public safety and public health meet. And the governor challenged staff to take a look at the history of the pandemic in Vermont. And as we all remember, it was all hands on deck approach, especially within state government. When I was the commissioner of corrections at the time, for example, we had correctional staff working within the health department to do contact tracing. And roles got mixed up because it was all hands on deck. The governor became concerned about acts of violence in the state. And the reports back to him centered around substance use disorder challenges, mental health challenges in communities. And he directed staff to start tracking what would be police calls for service that were related to certain categories. And out of that work, a little over a year ago, started identifying communities that seemed to be challenged, as many communities are in Vermont, around issues of mental health, substance use disorder, and some of the chaos that can come out of that as a result of those underlying issues. And he directed staff to rethink the approach to how to deal with these problems without relying on the criminal justice system to do it. And that's when I was asked to step in as the consultant. We've worked in Springfield and Springfield and Bennington to this point. In the process that's been followed, and I also want to emphasize to everyone that this process is not us here to tell Brattleboro, A, what your problems are, or how you should deal with your problems. And in fact, we're a guest here. The idea is to eventually help the community identify gaps that the community may not be able to fill and see where the state can help fill those gaps to have better outcomes. That's the goal here, not to be telling Brattleboro how they should approach their challenges around safety. It's to be a partner with Brattleboro to identify those gaps and figure out if the way the state can help fill those gaps and provide some expertise that's been developed now over the last 10 months or so of the work that we've been doing in communities. The first step in this process, and I've been doing it now for a little over a month. I met with John and the chair of the board first to advise this approach. I've talked to a couple members of the board. I've talked to some members of the community who are here tonight. I continue to talk with folks on a regular basis, just informing them of this approach. And the approach we've been using which is the first step of making people aware of the approach that we're suggesting we may be able to help with. That will eventually, if the community is receptive to this, will lead to a series of focus groups where those focus groups by certain disciplines, and I'll just give you a general idea of what those focus groups would be: education, treatment, social services, youth programs, criminal justice partners, and the list is as broad as the community is when it comes to those type of categories. Those focus groups would identify gaps that you're facing the issues around mental health, substance use disorder, and any obvious results of what that looks like in your community when it comes to community safety. I would rather refer to this as community safety and not public safety, because we're really talking about how to leverage public health resources and rely less on public safety resources to resolve issues. Quite frankly, we've been at that for a while, and we see where we are with probably what is the third generation of substance use disorder circulating around the state, and the increase in the overdose deaths that are being seen and tracked by the health department. After those focus groups, coming out of that will be reports that focus on the gaps. What we've done in the other two communities is then held a summit. The summit in Bennington was held in March. The summit in Springfield was held in June. And out of that summit was a collaborative effort with an action plan to figure out what the gaps are and strategize collectively and collaboratively across all disciplines on how resources can be marshaled to focus in on that, with the idea that you're going to lower incidents of calls for service to the police department, overdoses, some of the chaotic behavior that you may hear from your neighborhoods as a result of the mental health and substance use disorders. This is not about targeting individuals. This is about building systems with the support from the state to be able to deal with those underlying issues. We've had some success in Brattleboro, it's been a long day, in Bennington and Springfield. For example, in Bennington, they have formed a multi-discipline outreach team as a result of, if those partners hadn't come to the summit, not taking credit for that, but I question if they would have sat down and discussed how to put together an outreach team that's reaching out to those folks that are facing those challenges. And that's being driven by data by location, not by individual. If the rescue squad, for example, responds to a location for an overdose and a person is not want to be transported to the hospital, that outreach team's going back out 24 to 48 hours to try to do an intervention with that individual. That is not a police response. That is a multidiscipline outside of the criminal justice system. And that's one example. And Bennington also has a very focused group as a result of the summit, focused on the homeless population and strategizing on how to leverage some state resources to be able to add housing that will support the unhoused. I'm not talking about the hotel program, but a focus towards April when the hotel program will end. And so that is a quick overview of the approach that we're taking. I want to emphasize again that, I represent public safety and human services here from state government. We're not here to tell you what you should be doing. We're here simply to offer up the resources of the state to figure out if we can better fill the gaps that you're facing here in this community around issues that are affecting you. And, I cannot emphasize that enough. I have visited with the chief, visited with the fire chief. We've talked a lot about the approach and how we can support the efforts that are already underway here in Brattleboro. So I hope that's a good overview. I'll stop there, and if folks have questions, I'll try to answer the question, and if I don't have the answer, I'll get back with an answer.
Excellent. Jim, thank you so much for being here and being here in person to discuss this with us and to kind of lay out what you're thinking the plan is looking like. So Select Board, I'd open it up to you all for questions about this. I realize it's kind of a little bit of a shift in the discussion about our community safety process. And, as was referenced, we had a meeting earlier this month or last month about sort of what the state was looking to do. And we felt that the best way for this discussion when it came to our process was to invite a representative of this program down to discuss it so that we could hear what they were looking at and so that we could understand sort of how that fits into our years-long discussion about community safety. I think that it's an incredible opportunity personally, and I'm really grateful for the state's attention and willingness to specifically provide expertise and funding. If any of these ideas are going to cost us and cost this community, and so any help that we can get to help to address them from the state is much appreciated. So I'd open it up if there are board members who have questions first, and then we'll hear from community members. Franz?
Welcome. Thanks for coming down to join us. My name is Franz Reichsman, just one of the board members here. I wonder how familiar you are with the community safety process that's been going on in town for the past few years. Back in 2020, there was a major effort involving a large number of community members to identify community safety needs that are sort of outside of the normal criminal justice system and prison system, let's say. So we've already taken a pretty long walk down that road. And on the select board here, we've just finished this major project of deciding how EMS is going to be structured in town. And this is really our first meeting after that whole 6-month process. And part of our orientation going forward from this meeting was to turn our attention again to community safety issues in a very broad way, including what's been done up to this point, including other aspects of community safety that have not been addressed in detail in an organized fashion. There's been a lot of events relating to community safety recently, and we've kind of made this one of our very highest priorities for the board to look at going forward. When I heard about your project and the governor's 10 points, et cetera, I had to take a step back and try to figure, well, how does that fit in with what we're already doing, and how is it related to any timeline that we've been looking at? So that's really my question for you is, what's the state's timeline for providing help, and what kind of help are we looking at? And, we don't want to be duplicative. We don't want to create multiple pathways that then don't communicate well with each other. So given Brattleboro's specific position in the community safety discussion, can you envision how the governor's program would fit in and help us with what we've been doing?
Yes. First of all, I've read the report. I've seen the report. I've actually had a conversation with one of the authors of the report today. I want to repeat, again, I'm not trying to evade your question, but I think it's hard to answer that until the focus groups come together to identify those gaps. What could the state provide? So, for example, in Bennington, recently, the Department of Mental Health has provided some funding to that outreach team. Well, the outreach team was formed, and then they realized that Turning Point couldn't fund it with their existing funds. So because that became an important piece of the strategy that they decided they wanted to employ, not the state telling them, that there was funding found within mental health to be able to support that process. So that's an example of that. I don't see, again, I don't want to slice and dice words, but I would hesitate to call what's going on with the work that the governor's asked me to do as the governor's program. It's really what the chair talked about is that the governor recognizes from looking at data that some communities may not have the capacity or the resources. So get out there and find out what they need and figure out where the gaps are. I don't see this work stopping the conversation or what folks talked about before. I think it's going to try to enhance where you had some gaps and try to figure out if we can fill those gaps or not and what the challenges are. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's going to be really hard to say what I envision the outcome would be until I get done talking with folks and understanding where they are and where their thought processes are and where the focus groups that are out there, inclusive, may identify what are gaps that we think the state can fill.
So, yeah, I think that does certainly a good start on an answer. Let me just ask then if, it's pretty loose and flexible what you're describing.
Absolutely.
And so how is it budgeted for? What is there a line item or is there a pot of money? And if there is, are we competing with other towns for it? How does that work?
Well, there is no budget line for it. If anybody knows Governor Scott, he's pretty frugal with resources. The agencies themselves, so as a consultant, I'm being paid a consulting fee out of public safety, and they're finding those funds within existing funds. When we've identified gaps in other communities, we've tried to work within the funding sources now to try to fill those gaps. So in Springfield, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but there's conversations going on with the designated agency, which happens to be your designated agency, HCRS, to talk about a need that's been identified around navigating folks through systems of support of people who are at high risk. They could be developmentally disabled or other forms of challenges that they have that are causing the police to have to respond, and the police do not have the resources or the answers to deal with those situations. So that's another example of the conversation that came out of the summit. There is no existing budget. Now, I will tell you that the legislature passed, on the recommendation of the governor, $5 million for grant money to go to communities to work on issues around violence. And the RFPs are being put together now. The criteria for the RFPs are being put together now. So those funds would be available to communities to work on issues that they've identified through a grant process. And it will require measurable outcomes, but a grant process to be able to apply for funds.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
I'd say that this select board may be the most informed on RFPs of like any Brattleboro select board. Yeah.
Well, sir, I followed your news as I told you.
Yes.
And I'll leave those for other discussions for other days.
Other board members, any questions, comments? Liz.
Oh, thank you, Jim, for coming to town. Really
Good to see you.
appreciate it. One of the things that I was really grateful for during the pandemic was the motel program. But as a consequence, Brattleboro has become a focal point. And in June, when that program was up in the air, we asked the governor's office for a variety of actions, and none of which were complied with. So that just highlights the fact that you're here and how much we appreciate it and how much we appreciate looking at our issues and seeing where you can help. And one of the things that I'm sure you'll find is that, yes, there's mental health challenges and substance abuse, and those aren't crimes, but
Right.
they lead to crime in certain instances. And a lot of that crime is directed towards women and children. And last year, our chief came and told us that the preeminent crime in this town is the victims are women and children. And today there was an article in the paper about a domestic assault victim who, and the perpetrator was arrested again and again and released on conditions again and again. And I think we can do better for the women who are victims of domestic assault. And so I would just stress that should be something in our inquiry and something that we can do better for the people of Brattleboro. So by all means, look at our issues. I think that there's definitely gaps in our public health and our mental health system and in our substance abuse system. And we need things like increased mental health work. And we need things like perhaps a drug court so that there's treatment for everyone who wants it. And I think that would go a long way to helping us deal with, the big problems that we face and also the day-to-day problems that make life in Brattleboro problematic. So thank you again for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome. I would like to just comment about one of the areas that's tracked in the heat map that I talked about earlier that the governor directed staff to start working on. And ironically, the staff that's working on the heat map is the same digital services staff that created the heat map for the pandemic. A very talented group of IT people. When they talk to me, I'm a guy that, as you saw earlier, I thought I had turned my phone off. I didn't. I can't even turn my phone off. So they are a very talented group of folks. One of the areas that we've tracked in community is domestic violence. And, I don't need to tell you, and I certainly don't need to tell the chief, that, Brattleboro shows up on that heat map as a result of calls for service for domestic violence. And it is one of the outcomes that we would like to move the needle on. Ironically, in Bennington, as early as we've been into this process, their calls for service going to domestic violence are going down. Not saying that this is a victory, because it could be that victims aren't calling the police, but they're calling the hotline at the local shelter. But that's the kind of work we're trying to do to weave into this, to use data. Tomorrow we're meeting with some data folks to really start figuring out if we are making an impact in a community, what's doing that by looking at a deep dive, just not in the police data, because that's, again, we're trying to avoid people going into the system. In fact, it's one of the directives from the governor, is to try to get to the point where you're keeping people out of the system when it's an underlying public health issue and not not an overarching public safety issue, but they become public safety issues because of behavior.
Other board members? Daniel?
Sure, thanks. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
Nice to see you, and I enjoyed a conversation yesterday. I would like to get a little clearer about what this process looks like. So Franz had asked a question about timeline. We're being asked here to put an implementation plan on pause to accommodate this work that you're taking here. So can you tell us more when this process would begin and when it would end, and when we would start to actually implement?
I would submit to you that it started, right, from just my conversation with you and what I just described, as I meet more folks in the community to understand where they are in their thought process and where can you build that collaboration and coordination. I would hope that prior to Thanksgiving, we would start the focus groups and that we would have that work completed. I mean, we're working around holidays, in November and December. I would hope shortly after the first of the year, within, January, the latest, the beginning of February, we would set a focus group, or excuse me, a summit, if that's what people are inclined to support.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I got a couple of small questions.
Yeah.
And so how can you ensure that in forming these focus groups that we're actually getting the right people to attend them?
Because I'm going to depend on the folks that I'm talking to on the ground to point me. And what's happening is I talk to somebody, just happened tonight, the chief introduced me to somebody else that I'm going to have a conversation with that introduces me to somebody else. And I'm depending on focal leaders on the ground to make sure that those folks that are at the focus groups represent the right voices in the community. It's not us deciding that. It's the community helping us understand that. We're just the facilitator.
Okay. I think a lot of good work went into the community safety process, not so much the recommendations at the end, but the process that was created and shepherded in order to arrive at those recommendations did a lot of this work. And so I would hope that we would really build on that, not duplicate it, connect
Absolutely.
with those people, find out what they did, find out who they spoke to, and really make sure that those voices are present again in this work. I think that there is the potential for some of those voices to be lost. I know that a lot of those folks were people that wouldn't ordinarily participate in some kind of process like this. And so I would really hope that you'll connect with folks that were involved in that process and make sure that we build on it. I think one of the strengths that we have right now is that there has been great work done through that process, but also things like the COSU, which I think has a different name these days, and someone will tell me what that is, but it was the Consortium on Substance Use, which was pre-pandemic work that was happening, very collaborative. And, there are other tables that exist in town involving service providers in social services and whatnot. And, I know that you're working with Sue, Agency of Human Services, and she can kind of clue you into those networks. But, when you're describing what has been happening, say, in Bennington, some of that stuff is oh, yeah, we already kind of started doing that work several years ago. So I don't want to say that we're starting from scratch. I want to really build on what we already have in this community and add resources, add things that we really need, because there are a lot of unmet needs in our community. And our police department and other public safety folks do a really great job. And also we know that, a lot of people are not getting their needs met. I think one of the frustrations that folks who were involved in the community safety process have is that wow, we did all that work and then you did nothing with it, and that's on us, or at least on three of us, and also we are committed as a board to moving forward with that community safety process. That was one of our goals that we set, back in, May? And so I would really hope that this process that you're bringing to us here builds on and includes the work that's already gone on, really learns from the collaboration that's already happening in our community, and learns where like that collaboration is still not enough, right? Like I actually feel like there are lots of really great things happening in Brattleboro, and yet we still have needs that are being unmet. The small fund that we have for community safety is a drop in the bucket. Even a $5 million grant from the legislature that presumably would be, divvied up between various different entities, like it's not sufficient. We have a massive challenge here in Brattleboro. It's not unique to Brattleboro, but like we're responsible for Brattleboro. And I know that every one of us here really cares about making a meaningful impact on that. So I would hope that when we come at the other end of this process, we are ready to make some really big decisions and put some serious weight behind this.
Thank you, Daniel. Anyone else wish to speak board-wise? Peter.
Yeah, I guess unless I'm completely missing your role in this conversation, I don't think I am. You had mentioned you were a facilitator. I guess my question would be, would it be easier for this community just to engage with local people who understand the landscape and then just sort of using you as maybe a resource to help possibly engage with those communities on the ground here? I guess I kind of view you up here while we're down here. So is that a swing and a miss for me?
Yeah, not at all.
All right.
I think my role as a facilitator, look, it's not like I know Brattleboro like you all know Brattleboro.
Right. Well,
I've been in the state 50 years, right? I worked here in this community. I know a lot of folks in the community, and to both go to your point and the last point. We're not here to deconstruct anything that was done. We're here to build on what was done and find those gaps in order to try to help fill those gaps. So I'm not up here. In fact, I'm down here.
Okay.
And so I'll give you one example without probably violating any trust or upsetting anybody that's at senior leadership in state government. But there recently was an issue in Bennington where I don't think the state bureaucracy was moving fast enough. And I have those types of ability to get on the phone with decision makers and say, these people have been waiting for an answer from state government for weeks now. And, I was a state employee for 40 years. And my expectation of folks in state government is if somebody calls you, return the phone call. And so that's my role. It's not up here like looking down at Brattleboro. I'm here in the community trying to build relationships with myself in order to get to that focus group level, in order to move to a summit, in order to identify where the gaps are, and then voice on behalf of Brattleboro, try to fill those gaps and figure out strategies to fill those gaps. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. I'm going to turn it over to the public to take some questions, and I'll start in the room if you want to raise a hand. Yep, and then I'll look to Zoom. And you just identify yourself and where you're from for the record.
Yes. Hi, I'm Robin Morgan. I live in Brattleboro, and I had the pleasure of meeting with Mr. Baker last week. I feel really hopeful about this process because the adding of state resources to help address these problems, I think, could really help us take action much more quickly on some of the needs that were identified in the community safety report. When I hear you talking about the focus groups, that was also the method that was used as Daniel was saying, in the community safety review. And I would hope that you could use that as sort of like a foundation of information rather than trying to find those people and talk to them again.
Right.
Some of the stuff that people are going to be talking about when they identify what kind of needs there are here is very upsetting and traumatizing things. And to ask people to re-share something that they already had to go through the upsetting thing of talking about in public, it's just not, the most respectful way to do this. And I do think it is really important, like Daniel said, that these voices don't get lost. But I think that utilizing the focus groups that we already did as a foundation, and then, perhaps what the questions that you have will be going in a little bit of a different direction than what was done in that process. But I definitely don't think that that should be kind of like set over to the side and like restarted.
Great.
Yeah, that's my comment.
Great, thank you. If you want to speak to it.
Yeah, Abby, I actually talked to Emily about that today, and I recognize that from reading that report that some folks came forward and probably came from a very serious background with trauma. And so I do agree with you that some of that work is a foundation for, the work we would do if folks are inclined to work in this environment that we're proposing.
Okay, I see Dick's hand up on Zoom, and then I'll look to anyone else want to raise their hand who wants to speak in the room. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Baker. Thank you for coming down. I'm looking at this a little different. I've been talking about safety issues with this board and the previous board for close to 2 years now, and we have identified multiple areas that need to be addressed. And here you come down the street and saying, well, I think we should work together. And so to me, this is going to be a procrastination of what several of us have been trying to get done. And it looks like from what you've said, we're going to be probably 5 to 6 months out before we get some sort of report, if we're lucky. And, you made a statement about resources and calling the governor frugal. And I appreciate his frugalness, but this is an area that frugalness should not even be used as a word. There are serious problems in Brattleboro. I certainly know of really serious problems in Burlington that are going on. I have a sibling that lives up there, so I get weekly reports. And so $5 million is a drop in the bucket given what's going on just in our community. I see it on almost a daily basis. I'm out at night at 3 a.m. in the morning. So I see the underbelly of our community, which not very many people see. And it's kind of ugly. And no one seems to be listening. And I feel like I'm a great resource for our community. I feel like I have been ignored by our leaders on the select board and the administration. And it's not that they haven't heard our needs, they haven't addressed our needs. And so for me, this is going to be kind of a dovetailing of something that we should have an action plan going right now. And if there's anything that you can add while you're doing your interviews and your focus group to add to what we feel we already have, that's greatly appreciated. But stalling, which things that we have been asking for, I don't think is good for the community. I don't think the community can wait because of the drug problem, the alcohol problem, the homeless problem, the mental health issue problems, and the prostitution problems that we're having in our community. So I'll let you respond to that. And thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you very much, Dick. Speaker, if you wish.
Well, I don't know all that history, right? So it's hard to respond. What I would say is that no one's proposing that advancement in community safety stop because we are proposing this process to help identify those gaps to see if the state can fill it. I mean, no one is asking the chief to stop developing strategies in the police department or EMS to stop developing strategies or social services agencies to stop developing strategies. That's not That's not the concept here. Concept, again, is to try to figure out how we can support Brattleboro with the challenges they face. That's the concept.
Great. Okay, I saw multiple hands behind Lenny there. I'm sorry, I can't quite see you. If you want to, sorry. Gene Davis. I'm sorry, Chief Howard. I apologize.
My name is Gene Davis, and I actually am the executive director at branches here in Brattleboro. So I just had a couple of questions and kind of help me out. So I've been out here for almost a year now, and I hit the pavement, so to speak, almost every single day with different situations. And I appreciated what the select board, or no, I'm sorry, Dick was bringing up that we do have different things that are going on, which is the drug epidemic, the prostitutions, the different things that are happening. And being a survivor of human trafficking myself, there are some things that I would like to see, and I'm hoping maybe in the process of all this, I'm really short, I don't know if this is.
It's okay. It's just to pick up for BCTV.
Okay.
It's not producing any.
Oh, okay.
So you're good.
Okay. So my question, and there's a little bit of concerns that I have with hearing all this. So I'll do my concerns and then my questions later. My concerns are this: if we are already building a situation, we already have certain things that are in place, right, that Brattleboro already has, then the state comes and they say there's certain things that are pockets, but the state already knows. So for instance, I'll give you an example. We'll just do the drug epidemic. So drugs happen, and once again, I also have been clean off of crystal meth for almost 10 years. So usually the state has programs that usually last between 30 days to 90 days. After that, you dry them up, you send them back out. There's no placement for them. And usually what happens is the state not only sends them out, but they send them right back next door to their dope dealer, right? So that's one problem that I'm seeing in this, because that gap has been there and it's nothing new. So when I'm constantly hearing you guys saying that you want to fill the gap, that gap has been known. The same with mental health. Now, mind you, I worked at a hospital in Massachusetts and in New Hampshire, and the mental health departments in the hospitals have been shut down since pandemic, and a lot of nurses and doctors don't want to go back there. So there's some resources that have been kind of taken away, that hospitals themselves, and I've talked to Chris, the CEO of the hospital here, where that's one of the parts that they're struggling with. So when you talk, once again, talking about pockets that are not being filled and missing, the state already knows. So the questions then come into play. What are you guys doing already for those issues that you guys already know that's happening? That's nothing new. That's been going on for years. But then at the same time, me personally, and like I said, I work here. I actually live on the other side of the river, but I basically live here almost every single week. But my question would be kind of to the select board, why would we kind of pause on what we're doing already? Because we are already building connections. And I was talking to you this evening, I'm kind of the bridge between the faith community and the city on certain things of trying to engage the faith community back into the city of Brattleboro and Windham County. So my question to the board is, why will we kind of stop or slow down knowing that this is going to take a time, because you still have to connect with the people on the ground. You still got to get to know, and you still have to understand what's going on. So in the process of him doing that, why would we not keep going and just kind of meet notes and say, compare notes, like, okay, this is what we've done, this is where you're at, okay, and then kind of walk together. In our center, we say that we do life with each other, we walk with each other. So instead of stopping and then having to pick up, because I think the frustration, and I may be wrong from what I'm hearing from the community, is we've already in a process. Why stop a process that is being, me personally, I love our chief of police and our chief of fire department. I love them dearly because they're amazing. But why will we just stop what we are already doing? There's a lot of, like you said, a lot of women. I just had a woman come in who was just trafficked, and I have to help her and stuff. And, those are the type of things. We do have already resources here. It's not as if we as a community are not trying to help with the resources. It's when you have someone that has been prostituted for almost 20-something years and you try to convince this woman to get out of it and she doesn't. That was me. It's really on that person. So I think the language needs to kind of be more identified and clear, because when you say there's pockets, when it comes to addiction to drugs and to human trafficking and to alcoholism, it's not a pocket. We already know the issue. We know the solution that can happen. It's upon the person if they want to get out. So there's a lot of elements to that, and we can't force them to get out.
Okay, thank you very much, Gene. I can speak to that first question. And it's just my opinion, and I'm one board member. Basically, if you followed the select board meeting in July about community safety and the next steps, it was basically, we have no expertise. We need to hire someone who has expertise to help us take us to the next step on implementation of community safety goals, right? That's like my summary of it. Again, my opinion. We have the state coming in, not from the direction of the select board. They are coming in completely independently of us. I appreciate all of the work that Jim's come into being so polite about coming in and telling us about what they're doing and what the goals are. And I see it as an opportunity to basically get free expertise that the state is providing to help inform us on how we can move forward. And I think the other one, which is really important, is the funding, is the money, is that and I don't use the term lightly, I think it's foolish to believe that the town of Brattleboro can solve these issues without state help. And so if the state is coming in and is offering a perspective, expertise, and potentially funding, I think it's really important for us to take that seriously. And I also think what's really important from my perspective is that the question and discussion of community safety is going to happen forever. We're going to be talking about this. This is always going to be an issue in the town in some way. It should always be. We should always be discussing and checking in on this. And so I don't see it as a pause of I just think that I wouldn't want the town to essentially be moving through the same process at the same time, because what we basically approved in our implementation process was hiring an expert, having additional listening sessions, and doing basically the same thing that the state is saying is their plan. And so I as one board member, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to do them at the same time. And the fact that, and this is something that I'm hoping may happen, is that maybe some of the things that come out of the state's process will have achieved some of those goals that we're trying to achieve, and we can focus our efforts on other ones that haven't been achieved, or we can help to supplement them. So this is just one perspective of one board member. It's complex, and I understand the frustration. I also feel frustrated. I'm not going to take a follow-up right now because I've got other people who want to speak. But I'll let other board members speak, and I'll let Jim speak too. Daniel?
Thanks.
You want to contradict everything I just said?
Sure, why not?
Please.
I mean, I really appreciate what you're saying, Gene, and I agree with quite a lot of it. And also, these gaps that exist in our community, like the lack of housing for our residents, like that will continue to be a situation. Also, the people that are trying to improve that situation will continue to do that work whilst this process is going on. Jim does not have the power to say, all social service providers in Brattleboro, please shut up shop for a few months while we do some focus groups, right? That's not what's happening. I think the process that Jim is offering, I admit to initially being skeptical of. I was like, I don't want to be pausing this work. Like, we were just about to get going on implementing this stuff. And we know that in implementing this stuff, there's a ton of stuff we don't know how to do. There's some stuff here that we're not even like capable of doing on our own. Like, the town government does not exist in a vacuum. The people of Brattleboro are well served by a variety of providers, one of which is your organization. And that work's going to continue. So I hope that by the time we come out of this process, we are in like such better shape to go ahead and implement things, but I don't think anybody else that's already doing that work is going to like say, oh, I'll take a few months off. I know that you're not going.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a couple, I know your time limit with your agenda, but a couple comments. First of all, at no point am I suggesting you should stop the work you're doing.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear on that. That's not, it's not what the recommendation is. And the second point that I want to make is about the gaps, is that, I was a commissioner of an agency in state government, and the summits involve secretaries, assistants, deputy secretaries, commissioners of the state agencies sitting and listening to the community problems. And unfortunately, the way state government operates sometimes is the commissioner is the last person to find out there's a problem in a community within the framework that you work in. And the last point I want to make about understanding, like people coming out of treatment, as the commissioner of corrections, I often said to our staff, we do not do a good job transitioning people to communities. Right. So you're preaching to the choir. I understand exactly what you're saying, but I want to emphasize that a lot of times you may think a commissioner of an agency understands what the issue on the ground is. We don't. And the beauty of this process is they hear it firsthand from the people in the communities. And it brings a certain amount of accountability to state government when a commissioner, and in the case in Bennington, the governor was present. He heard things he had never heard before. And it brings a certain level of accountability to state employees to up their game when it comes to how you're supporting communities. So again, just a couple comments back about the process here.
Yep, Chief Howard, and then there were hands, and I don't know if the hands are up. I'm just conscious of time, so I'll just we'll get through these last hands.
Leonard Howard, the fire chief. I just want to, I respect everybody's opinion, and I know everybody wants these situations fixed tomorrow. It's not going to happen. It didn't happen overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight. And what Colonel Baker is here trying to do is he knows we have resources. He knows we have groups in town that can be helpful and beneficial to everybody. But the thing is, we're all guilty of it. We get in our silos and say, my group can do this and your group can do this, and they don't want to come together. And what these focus groups are going to be is he's going to bring these people together, and then we're going to have a summit and sit down and say, okay, we've learned how we all can help with this situation. Now let's develop the plan and go out and help. And again, I respect everybody's opinion, and I know it's a situation. Trust me, I know my staff, Chief Hardy's staff, I've dealt with it today, and we're dealing with it every day. And it's not easy for them, and it's not easy for the public. But this is the right step in the right direction we're going in, and I'm hopeful that everybody comes together and makes it a success. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chief. Hand in the back here. Not sure who had their hand up first. Yep.
Select Board, Mr. Baker. My name is Tracy Flinner. I'm a constituent of Brattleboro. I I'm here to address the safety issues. My neighborhood is the Winter Street, Fairview area, and we've been hit by a lot of break-ins, car break-ins. The same gentleman we call the bike bandit in our neighborhood has been, we like to say terrorizing. He really isn't a terror. He's just a big nuisance. We have a bunch of senior citizens in our neighborhood. And what I would like to do is encourage the select board members, before they do anything, please do some ride-alongs. Please do some ride-alongs. Each one of you, I encourage you, go to the police department, look at the body cams footage, look at the dash cams, listen to the audio calls that the police department have to deal with on a daily basis. Because not only are they dealing with it, they see what we deal with on a daily basis, okay? This is what we're dealing with, and this is why we're asking you what you hear. Please don't sit and wait. This community safety report went out on January 1st, 2021, and I understand that you've not all been sitting here for that length of time, but it has been sitting there, and we've all been dealing with this. My biggest problem, and someone did mention the conditions of release, the gentleman that is out stalking his victim. How many conditions of release are allowed before he is held accountable? Same thing with the gentleman who is stalking our neighborhood. I'm asking the board to support legislation to change the conditions of release legislation and also the law regarding car break-ins. If a law-abiding citizen misses a few payments on their car's repossessed, right? They miss some tax payments, what happens? They get a lien on their home. This is not happening to the law-abiding citizens. It's not happening. This is happening, bad guys, they're getting away with it, right? What happens? Actions have consequences in the real world, except for in Vermont courts. What happens? The repercussions fall on the shoulders of the law-abiding and the law-enforcing. It's not fair to us. I understand that you have procedures to follow. We all understand that, but we're the ones that are bearing the brunt of it. We are bearing the costs financially, emotionally. We're dealing with anguish, anxiety, and we're asking for action now. But also, as you deal with the state, as they come in, please do the ride-alongs. Please look at the body cam footage and see what we're dealing with. And maybe that'll give a little impetus to act now as you're also looking at what the state can offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I didn't catch your name.
Tracy Flenner, Flenner.
Flenner, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's one more hand in the room.
Go to online first?
No, Gary's hand went up later, so I think he'll understand.
Hi, everyone. Alex Fisher, District 2, Brattleboro. I also was hoping to get some time to gather my thoughts a little bit more succinctly to move it forward. First of all, I want to say thanks, Jim, for all the work that you've been putting in already. I've read notes from many meetings that you've had with lots of folks, including M, who is the co-author of the report, and it seems like a really great meeting. And thanks to you all for engaging in all this and bringing it forward and all the points you brought up so far. I think, I just want to reiterate the point of and I think I have a lot of compassion for you, Jim, as a consultant myself, when I come into a process where I'm like, cool, here's the 3 steps. And the client's like, well, we're already kind of in step 2, but it's a little bit messy because we did it our way. So we're kind of there, but not really. But can you do your thing, but also our thing? So I feel like there's that moment happening of, right, we're not just ooh, we've never thought about this, help, right? We're well, we've been doing a thing. It kind of got paused a few times. And so I have a lot of compassion for you coming into that. And with that, I think there's something I'm hearing of no one is saying that we're stopping the process. And in reality, right, like the town's also not moving forward on hiring someone and working on those like specific things coming out of the community safety review while this is happening. So there's like in theory, we don't want to stop it, but in reality, like it doesn't really make sense to do both things at the same time. And so there is a tangible stopping. And I just want to like name that, as that's a hard pill to swallow for some of us. And how then can we be using the community safety report as something that can launch us further into the process, right? Like skipping some of those initial pieces because that data has been gathered, because that information is there. So one of the questions I have is sort of like, what specifically is missing from the community safety report and from the focus groups that you would want to add into the data that already exists? And then the other question I have is, I think there's a slight concern for me that looking through the 10-point platform, 9 out of those 10 points are about increasing the scope or the resourcing of police. And a lot of that is like, we need more data, we need more staff, we need more, like in the court systems to do the work that we're doing. There's one that is about the mutual aid sort of pandemic level response. And the community safety process work is really like predominantly about focusing on reducing the workload of our current police system in order to have more manageable jobs, bring things into the community, and address root problems. So part of me is like curious where those two work together when 9 points versus, right, like the whole thing. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that. And then also that other question I had that now I forgot.
What were the
focus groups?
Yes.
What do you see as missing that you would need to add in, seeing as some of that focus work's been done?
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think to answer your first question, I mean, I don't know yet because I haven't finished talking with folks, right? And about what could be added to the conversations that happened as part of that qualitative collection of information that went into that report. So I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I really don't have a handle on that yet. Your second piece about I'm not focused on 9 of the other 9 points of the governor's 10-point plan. I'm focused on number 8, which again is really where public safety, public health comes together. And most of the time in the communities I've worked in my experience in running corrections is that we've applied a criminal justice answer to a public health problem, and we wonder why we have the outcomes we have. So my focus in my arrangement, working under the umbrella of public safety and human services, is the focus on number 8, which is the same thing you said. My hope would be that if we found a path forward to the summit, that eventually Chief Hardy's calls for service on domestics and the acts of domestic violence go down, and measurable results that you're moving. I like to use the analogy of a football team, right? You got to know you're moving the ball down the field, and if you're not using data, that'd be like running a scrimmage without keeping score. It's only practice. And I think it's very important that we identify those problems in the community, car thefts being another one. It's indicative of chaos in the community driven by these underlying issues. I'm focused on public health, public safety, and how to move the needle on. That's where I'm coming from, if that helps.
Great. I'm going to keep going unless you want to speak briefly on that.
No, I just want to speak at length.
I'm going to go Gary and then Abby and then I think Seth, did you have your hand up at one point? No? Okay. I feel like I saw one other hand up.
Can you hear me? My camera's coming on. It's working slowly.
Yep.
Okay. Yep, we're getting there. Hey, how are you doing? And Ian, yes, I have a lot of patience. I'm a good doctor. So my thing is that basically, thank you, Jim Baker, Gary Stroud, Brattleboro District 2. Appreciate you coming down and the select board and with the CSR recommendations and your 10-point recommendations. I think the answer to that is more legislative and judicial. I think it needs to be addressed on a higher level. We're at the point is that we've had many meetings and discussions for way back. And I think this is something we need to do is have either our legislators come down here, as Dick DeGray said, and sit down with them and have them probably a part of that and find out what laws need to be tweaked, because a lot of the laws are either old or outdated, needs to be brought up to speed or needs to be changed to work for the community and not just for one specific individual or parties or whatever. I'm on the CPCC, Citizens Police Communications. I work with a lot of people in the community. I'm a man on the street. I'm out and about. I walk around and I see and I, engage with a lot of discussion. And it's the same thing. They talk about you have more meetings than Congress, but you don't accomplish anything. And I said, yeah, I totally understand. It's about action. So the 5 million is great, but if you don't have legislation or judicial backing you up with that, then all the plans that are laid out, the best laid plans of mice and men or whatever, of no avail, because then you're right back where you started. So you have to start where a plan is implemented with judicial legislation and it's enforced, and it's also implemented where it's equitable, fair, and diverse in the area where everyone's being treated in the same fairness of the law that should be. It's like the lady said, if you don't make your car payments, they repo your car. You don't make your house, guess what? Well, the laws apply to anyone, just like with the IRS or anywhere else. But it seems that this is the only law that doesn't seem to be working. So we need to go back to formula, figure out what it is that either just got left in the facets of the thrilling days of yesteryear, just like with CPCC. I got to bring it up to modern standards. It's 14 years old, the mission statement. Well, times have changed. So I got to update this stuff. A lot of the stuff needs to be brought up to speed. I work with Chief Hardy. I sit down with them. I work with the people. I want this town to come together in unity in the community and make this work, because as we're in a committee, people are ODing, they're dying, they're losing their homes as we speak. We need to take action now and make things happen. So your answer is to talk to your legislators, get them on here. They're working for us. They work for the people. It's time to get them in on this and get them a part of this to make this happen, to take it up top to Montpelier. Okay, because a lot of this stuff, what, you said 6 months?
Gary, I'm just going to respectfully request you finish up your comment.
So my wrap up is that we need to do better. That's the end of my discussion. Thank you very much, Ian.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, Gary. All right, Abby. We'll hear from the board.
As far as up there too.
Oh, really?
Hi there.
Hello.
Yeah, I wanted to thank.
Just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from for the record.
Thanks. Yes, this is Abby Manukin. I'm in District 2 and here in Brattleboro. And yeah, I wanted to thank Jim for coming to this meeting and presenting to the select board, and also for some of the initial conversations he's had in town, including one that I had with him and a few other folks earlier this week. I'm excited about possibilities for overlap and alignment between what could come out of this process with support from the state and what has been done with the community safety report that came out a few years ago. A few points of concern that I have, and just kind of like hoping for it to go as smoothly as possible. One is that the community safety report really centered the voices of most impacted people in our community, and that was very deliberate. And it's a big ask to try to hear from those voices again when they've already shared their stories it's like free labor and a lot of emotional labor put into this, to that process. And in this case, would then be asked to share it with a former cop where there may be like challenges in opening up there. And so I want to be sure that those voices aren't excluded, and yet also acknowledging that it may not be a straightforward process to go back to those communities again. So hoping that those voices can be uplifted from the work that's already been done. I know people have said we need to like come up to speed, but in reality, the issues have not really changed so much in those few years since that report came out. And it doesn't seem like all of that work needs to be redone. So acknowledging the work that has been done and trying to uplift it, and maybe filling in some gaps that Jim has noted or others in the community have noted. And then, another thing just about data collection and how that data collection would be happening. And hopefully, like really, that was one of the recommendations in the community safety report, is just like getting data and using data to then move forward. And so hopefully that can be really a key part of this work, but agreeing on what that data is and how it's collected and how it's utilized feels really, really important. And finally, just making sure that it's not just listening to the loudest voices and like who knows who, and oh, I think you should talk to this person and that person, because I think that that really poses a risk of not including everyone, especially most impacted people, and like mostly listening to the loudest voices, or business owners, or people who are criminalizing behaviors like homelessness and poverty, and as opposed to trying to figure out alternatives to incarceration. And I think that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. Abby, Farr, I see you got your hand snuck in there at the end, so you will be our last speaker on it, and then we'll hear last comments from the board before we move on to the next agenda item.
Hi there, thanks. Farm East District, well, used to be 3. I forget what it is now.
It's still 3.
It is? Okay.
Yes.
I thought it was 7 or something, some completely different numerics.
We changed it back. Anyhow.
Oh, okay. Fabulous. Slow on this uptake on that, sorry. I'm excited about this idea of a heat map. I'm a bit of a data geek and GIS geek. I love that kind of thing. But in this particular instance, I'm curious. Well, partly like what is it that defines a community as being hot, and is the heat exactly what we're looking for? I understand that the utility of tracking a lot of this data around crime, violent crime, property crime, that can sort of be conceived as a kind of proxy for other problems going on in the community. But my concern is that a lot of what we want to track is maybe actually coldness and the absence of data and the absence of resources. So I wonder, if these heat maps are really going to be telling us the whole story about where the actual solutions are. They might identify some of the problems, but not necessarily the solutions. It's a little hard to track the lack of adequate healthcare, the lack of adequate mental health services, the lack of even decent transportation. Liz talked about the hotel program and how that kind of like concentrated a lot of things in Brattleboro, and we have a lot of service providers in Brattleboro. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that heat ends up here, but what's cold and what's lacking in the outlying communities that makes it so hot here? Maybe that's where we should be focusing some of our attention. So yeah, that's my concern about that. Thanks.
Appreciate that, Farr. And I actually just realized that I think I got your district the wrong way. I think it's actually 9 and not 3. I've done it. So I'm showing that I actually don't remember it fully either. So my bad. Do you want to speak for a moment on the heat map and because my understanding on it wasn't like a hot community or not a hot community. It was more like about areas within a community, but correct. I also may not understand that.
No, that's correct. And it's really focused on the type of activity that the chief, well, actually both chiefs are responding to that are indicative of the type of incidents that when you peel the onion back, you realize that you're trying to apply that public safety tool when it's really a public health tool. Mm-hmm. So, and I readily admit that the data on the heat map is just the way the call comes in right now to a police department looking out over the state. And what we're trying to work with Bennington and Springfield now, that data is only as good as how far you push it down, and the community owns the data. It's no good for the folks at digital services at state government to be looking at a heat map across the state. It's really for the folks on the ground making the decisions on how they want that data to be used, and being careful about how you use data so it doesn't weaponize other systems that you shouldn't be weaponizing. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, board. Any other final questions or comments? Daniel?
Yes, thank you. Jim, I really appreciate your time, and I'm actually really happy that we drove the point home about approaching things with a public health mindset as opposed to the public safety mindset, right? Like, I feel like that's kind of actually at the heart of what a lot of us really care about. You know, I don't think anybody in this room is trying to send a homeless person to prison for being homeless. I think we know that that's about a lack of available housing, and it may be about some other things as well. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just kind of detailing like the kinds of metrics that you're using on these heat maps. Like, what are you looking at? Is it, I'm presuming it's particular kinds of calls.
Yeah. So, and I'm not prepared, like it's not in front of me, so some of this may not be completely inclusive. So when that data is looked at, it's the type of like the conversation about cars being broken into, that data, gun violence, homicides, domestic violence, burglaries, larcenies. That's the kind of data that is on the heat map right now. Just to give state leaders a general idea of where that activity is in the state in order to figure out. I mean, obviously, if the chief has a homicide in your community, which you've had a couple of them in the last few months, I know the chief depends on the state police, a state asset, to come help with that from processing the scene and other resources. And so right now that data sits at that high 10,000 foot view. In fact, we're having a conversation tomorrow around data, how to help communities figure out what is it that you want to measure so you know you're making progress. Mm-hmm. You can keep working at this, and if you don't have agreed upon measurements in the community, you're never going to know if you're making progress or not. And people are going to tell stories over and over again. And I remember when I was a chief in Rutland, I used to say to the citizens all the time, the hardest people on Rutland are the people that live in Rutland. And so without good data, you're going to continue telling these stories that may or may not be accurate. And so I hope that helps answer your question, Daniel.
It does, somewhat. And there's more to be revealed. And I'm, hoping that we will all sort of be really involved in this process. And I hope that members of the community will be very involved.
Other board members, Franz?
Yes, thank you, Ian. As I'm listening tonight, brings my thoughts back to things that I've thought about a number of times in this context. And we've heard from a couple of people about, one thing is concerns about conditions of release, requirements for bail, the revolving door of people getting caught apparently doing criminal activity and being back on the street the next day. I hear comments like that all the time. That is what I'm hearing more than anything else right now from the community. However, As someone who's pretty familiar with the community service, the community safety review process, there's a very different perspective, which is the one that we heard a minute ago about alternatives to incarceration, that incarceration is not the answer. That's not where we're going to get to true community safety. Similarly, we heard that the community safety report was motivated and centered on those most impacted. In that context, it's most impacted by police. However, we've also heard from people who are most impacted by crime. So when you think about who's most impacted, you have to think about both of those. And I think there are individuals and groups in town who will find themselves in real disagreement about definitions, about word usage, and about what steps are most appropriate and what issues are most important. To me, that is kind of the crux of this whole process, is how are we going to arrive at some common understanding of what's important and how we're going to go about achieving goals based on that understanding. And I don't see it as being a very simple and necessarily congenial process. I'm anticipating a fair amount of controversy and disagreement about this. I think the process you've laid out is a reasonable way to proceed forward, but I think we have to go through that process, which will include many important elements of the community safety report, and also will include many other voices who didn't find their perspectives fully reflected in that report. And I think that's where we are. I think that's our starting point, and that we should be willing to openly state what we think, not sugarcoat things, and bring areas of disagreement right out into the light and see if there's ways we can work together to find areas where we can agree and where we can take action that really do have an impact on safety in our community. So that's kind of where I think we're at right now.
Great. Thank you, Franz. Anyone else wish to speak? Peter?
Sure.
And then
one of the more frustrating things that that I feel, it's more of a statement, less of a question, is when I ran and got elected to the select board, these are the issues that I wanted to address. Tracy laid out what's happening in her community. This entire board received an email from somebody just this morning echoing that, although their criminal didn't have a nickname, right? So these constant conversations around these things are just a pile of lip service for me. We're all going to go home, we're all going to wake up tomorrow, we're going to go about our jobs, and I feel like nothing will happen. There will be no advancement to this conversation. There will be nothing done. You want to reduce an overtasked police force, you have to force your legislators and your lawmakers to look at released on conditions. I had a conversation with a police officer who told me a story that they arrested somebody for stealing a car with their released on conditions on the passenger seat. Part of those release conditions were not to steal another car. So those things are a joke to begin with. And this is where
okay, sorry.
What? So this is where my blood begins to boil a little bit. When I know that we have these problems, I know that there are alternative forms of policing that I agree with. I don't believe that incarceration is the bottom line for everything. I don't think we're going to arrest our way out of this situation, but I don't think we are going to advance this conversation by just having more conversations. So I'm at a boiling point where something needs to happen. The people that we entrust to police this community get the support that they need. The people who want to find those alternative sources for policing get the support that they need, because I recognize not everybody wants a blue uniform showing up, that there'll be an adverse reaction. I've had conversations with the police department about this. We keep hearing the same thing from people on the street. I know that all of these board members have heard these stories of things like Tracy and the email that we got and the other emails that we have, and that there just doesn't seem to be any traction. So I guess I'm echoing tonight my complete and utter frustration in advancing something onto an agenda that can happen. So, I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. It's not that I don't appreciate the work that Jim's been doing. I would like to use him as a supporting role for these things. I don't, nothing personal, Jim. I don't necessarily need him coming in and telling us how to do it in our community, though I don't think that that's what he's trying to do. But I just think that some of the stuff is a waste of gas, and unless we actually do something that stops talking about these problems that we know are happening and trying to find actionable solutions, we are just going to continue to sit here and spin our wheels on the ice. That's just where I am now.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter. So I think I would really like to get to break. Do you both need to speak on this again?
I have a very brief statement.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Jim for coming here. The one thing that I think hasn't been said is that what we've learned in this community in the past year is that social workers are at risk. And that while we're deliberating all these alternatives and support for the police, it's very important that we understand that social workers need support. That's all.
Appreciate that, Liz. Daniel, do you have another brief comment?
Mine's more straightforward. Specifically, what would you like to see on an agenda that?
Okay, that's going to get outside of the scope of this agenda item.
Okay.
So
please email us with that specific thing so we can consider it.
For sure. But what I would like to say, and sort of speaking to Peter's point, one of the things that I am grateful to Jim's presentation and what he's bringing to this community are real results that have occurred in other communities. In Bennington and Springfield, there are real things that are happening in those communities based off the work that Jim's done. And as a little teaser trailer for next select board meeting, we're going to be discussing legislative agendas. And I would imagine that the discussion on bail review and on conditions of release, I'm sure will be a discussion. And I'm sure that no one on the select board is considering to criminalize poverty. And so I would hope that you would have a nuanced discussion on this issue when we do discuss it next meeting. But we will. That is something that we should really be considering when we're talking with our legislators, which I totally agree with. So I think with that, I want to thank Jim so much for being here. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the work that you do and for community members here in the select board being involved in the work as much as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back at 8. So we're going to reconvene the Brattleboro Select Board meeting. It's 8:20. We went 3 minutes over when I thought we would be. Not terrible for our break. And we're going to move into just as contentious of an issue, the Brattleboro updated website presentation, which I think Seth is going to take over. John, do you have anything you wanted to speak to first?
No, just that we have communications coordinator Seth Thomas with us tonight to step us through some of the exciting stuff he's been working on the new website. So,
is there going to be a heat map?
No heat map.
Not yet.
Not yet. But
we're open to suggestions.
Can't take the heat. Get out of the kitchen.
So we're gonna get a presentation from our communications coordinator. It's going to involve a sort of PowerPoint presentation that doesn't have live website. It's got pictures of the website. That just for viewers at home, if you wanted to pause on a page, this presentation is in the backup material under this agenda item, and so you can go ahead and peruse it on your own time as well. And it might be up on the website as well. I don't know, but the presentation
in the backup material.
Yeah, just in the backup material. Yep. Okay, great. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. So I'm here to review the work that's been happening on the website throughout the past year, what the public can expect when the website goes live, including several of its new features, and talk about the launch date. Patrick, thank you. So I wanted to mention from the top that the town was able to secure the domain brattleboro.gov. The town applied to the .gov program over the winter And this will authorize the town to use the .gov domain instead of .org. The reason why we're making this switch is because having the .gov domain will help identify our page as an official government website and will help the public find our website when using a search engine. This is a federal program, and there's a naming convention in place that requires most cities and towns to include the state in the domain. So, for example, there's an albanyny.gov and an albanyga.gov. However, because Brattleboro is indeed the one and only, we were able to apply for an exception, and so we will just simply be brattleboro.gov. While the website will be transitioning to a .gov website, the goal is to retain both the .gov and .org domains, mostly so that the brattleboro.org domain doesn't fall into the wrong hands. If brattleboro.org were left unclaimed, someone who could use the old domain to try to scam the public. So we're keeping ownership to prevent that from happening. And moving forward, after the launch of the website, CCI Services will be managing both domains. Thank you. Along with the website domain, town employees who've been using the @brattleboro.org for their email accounts will also transition to @brattleboro.gov. Because we'll have access to both email domains, staff will still receive email even if it's sent to their old address. CCI will be making this switch, and the .gov email transition will be happening effective October 10th, which is next Tuesday. I'll be sending out some info about that to the public before the transition. So again, just so you know, the switch is happening. However, if you do send an email to a .org address, the user should still receive it. Once I receive confirmation from CCI that all is well, I'll be updating the current website with the new email addresses. Yeah.
Will the emails to the two addresses be merged on our email, on our Outlook page when we go there?
Effectively, yeah. It's kind of seamless. I was sort of the test subject for CCI, and I haven't really noticed any changes. I'll still receive either or.
Okay.
I have noticed that when I send out emails now, it does try to auto-correct to .gov, and so it should seamlessly merge the two together.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. So back in spring, Edrix Creative, the developers working on the website, visited Brattleboro and spent the day meeting one-on-one with a focus group. The group had 10 members, and it included a few people who participated in an initial focus group held back in early 2022, some patrons from the senior center, members of the public, and a couple staffers. The group reviewed an early build of the website with a focus on the design of the site's navigation. They were asked to complete 9 tasks related to navigation, where they had to search the site to find information. They were also given a survey after the test where they were asked about the overall look and feel of the site. The group expressed that they enjoyed the user experience on the new site and found it easy to navigate. Many of the tasks had users searching to find a specific landing page or a link. There were only a few instances where users needed some prompting to complete a task, and Edrix was able to make some direct edits to the site that day to improve the functionality and the cosmetic features of the site. I found it especially helpful to hear members of the group talk through exactly how they were searching the site, and that was something that Edrix had talked about earlier in development, that you really need to create multiple pathways to find the same piece of information on the site, and something that was factored in as we continued development. I also just wanted to mention that at the time we had identified a user who had a vision impairment, and they were interested in testing the site. At the time, Edgeworks had asked that we wait until later in development, just because at the early test phase, they just weren't ready yet because the accessibility features weren't baked in. But Edgeworks actually just gave me the green light to reach out to that person, so that's something that I intend to do, hopefully, in between now and the launch date. So after months of building the foundation, Edgeworks gave me access to start making direct edits to content. Over the summer, as I began to review their work, I made an effort to reorder how some information was presented, whether that was grouping things differently or rearranging content within the website itself. During this early phase of editing, I inevitably happened across bugs. There were times I would try to make edits to the website that would cause unintended consequences. At the beginning, there were some global issues. Basically, I would make an edit that would lead to all these different problems, which would break the website. But Edgeworks was very responsive to my needs as that happened, and we would trace our steps back just to see what was going on. And as I continued to build out the website over the summer months, these issues became more granular. So it would just break a chunk of the website rather than the whole thing. Before it launches, Edgeworks does intend to clean up some of the code behind the mega menu, as that caused the most problems during the building phase. So as I continue to make edits on my end, Edgeworks worked on the responsive version of the website, which is how the website will display on a phone or a tablet. On the current website, it can be hard to find the exact thing that you're looking for because there aren't any visual cues to make things stand out. So for instance, if you're looking for a specific file that's hyperlinked on the page, that item may be linked somewhere inside of a long paragraph. To help specific files stand out more, especially when you're viewing it on a phone, I added a lot of button links toward the top of pages to help direct users towards context-specific files or links, which is basically to say that if you're on the web page for marriage licenses, the link to the actual marriage license is now right at the top, which you would hopefully expect. The part of the website I'm excited about the most is the news section. This provides the town a space to gather all the information from town departments in a single organized spot. The news section is a blog where we can add photos, links, and videos, but this will also give us a place to post news items that may only be a few sentences long. One of the bigger issues with the current website is that sometimes it's hard to make news stand out, and hopefully having a news section with a more uniform formatting will correct that issue. Moreover, the site's news section is free, so you don't have to sign up for an account like with social media, so it can serve as the central place to spread information. And along with that, we also now have the ability to post alerts. The alerts can appear as an orange or a red banner that will appear at the top of the screen, and it can be set to appear across every single page throughout the website. The alert itself can link to a specific blog post for further information. So an example of that is if the Gibson-Aiken Center has to close down due to the weather, we could post a blog about it, create an alert banner, and then include a link inside of that banner to the blog post with more details. I should mention that this feature does have its limits. It does not send users an alert or an email or something like that. It's just a way to highlight important information that we'd be sending out along with all the other methods that we'd be using like social media or press releases. But the web alerts will help us emphasize more urgent information. And just a few examples of how we can use news posts throughout the website. Select Board meeting material can be shared as a news post. I just wanted to mention this because I've been posting Select Board meeting material on the homepage of the website for a while now. And if folks are wondering where that would be moving forward, I plan to create a news item for each meeting. And the news post can be found on the homepage, the news section, and the Select Board page itself. And those news items can act as sort of like an archive for Select Board material. We also have the ability to add news items on other pages, not just department pages. So for instance, we could create a project page that contains a news section that's specific to that one project. And on a final note on news, Edgeworks created an entirely separate blog specifically for the police blotter. As I had mentioned last time I was here, the police department and fire department pages will be coming to brattleboro.gov. And the police blotter from the old police page has been migrated over. So you can look for that in the new police section. When Edgeworks was building out the site, they incorporated some accessibility features like alternate color palettes for color blindness and the ability to increase font size. Since then, the accessibility options on the website have been greatly expanded. Edgeworks integrated a third-party app called Accessiby, which you may have seen on other websites. I just wanted to provide a quick overview of what it does and how to use it. So on the back end of the site, Accessiby automatically scans and adjusts website elements to conform to global accessibility standards. Basically, that it just ensures that images have alt text and that the code used throughout the site has been optimized for keyboard navigation and screen readers. But on the front end, users will be able to customize elements within the website using a toolbar. You can find the toolbar by looking for the blue and white icon, which is up there on the slide. And the icon will appear toward the bottom of the screen on either the desktop version of the website or the mobile version. When you click on the icon, a bunch of options will appear, the first of which are profiles, which are presets that activate multiple settings at one time to help users with specific needs. So for example, the impaired vision profile will increase the font size, enhance the contrast of the colors on the screen, and increase the overall size of content on the page. If you keep scrolling down, you can find more granular options to personalize how you're viewing the website. This will give the user more control over the font, size of their cursor, or highlight links on the page. There are some limits with this widget as well. The widget would provide options for content contained within the actual website, brattleboro.gov, and not things that we would link to off-site. So what's next? Over the next few weeks, I want to comb through the entire site just to search for errors, clean up the pages, and get ready for the public. A few weeks back, I'd asked Carol Lalott and Sarah Clark if I could visit the Senior Center after the website launches and offer a tour of the site for some of the patrons there. Some of the folks at the Senior Center had expressed to me that they feel like they didn't have the strongest computer skills, so I just wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable locating things on the website. And Sarah said that she was going to talk that over with her patrons to see if they wanted a group presentation or one-on-one meeting, so that's in the works. I also intend to record a video tour, which can be published on YouTube and shared on the website. And I imagine this video is a starting point for folks who are looking for a general rundown of what's on the site and how to use the navigational features and the accessibility widget. I'd basically record my screen so that the viewer can see my mouse moving around the website, and I'd narrate as I point things out. And hopefully that will be ready in time for the launch. Looking toward the future, I'll be looking at web traffic on Google Analytics, which will help us determine which pages the public are visiting the most. And that could impact the content that appears on the homepage, especially higher up on the homepage. So if people, we find out that everyone's going to go visit the rec center's website, we may have to move that up higher in the website. And once the website launches, there's still a lot to do. Frequent updates will help with search engine optimization, as well as keep the public engaged and interested. Especially after launch, I'll be monitoring the site for bugs and errors so that I can alert Edgeworks with problems as they pop up. The website also provides a way for you to reach out to me directly with feedback. If you have ideas or if you think something isn't working, please let me know. I'm especially interested in hearing if members of the public notice issues with functionality. So if you find a broken link, or if folders on some pages aren't sorting numerically, that would be. And also the search feature too. If you're searching for something and it's not popping up for some reason, that's actually really helpful for me to know, just because I can make some adjustments to the back end of the site. So please feel free to reach out. You can find the feedback form by using the search bar and typing in feedback. The option is also in the mega menu, or you could also send me a direct email at sthomas@brattleboro.gov. And finally, I just wanted to end with the launch dates. So again, town staff who've been using the @brattleboro.org email domain will be switched over to @brattleboro.gov on October 10th. If you have someone's email address saved and you accidentally send something to their old email, it's okay. They'll still receive it. Just know that the new emails will be listed on the new websites, both websites, the old and the new. And the .gov emails will be the primary contact moving forward. And finally, the website is scheduled to launch on November 8th. And should that change for any reason, I will certainly let the public know, but that is currently the plan.
Great. Thank you so much, Seth, for that presentation on the website and where it's at, and very exciting launch date, hopefully on November 8th. Board members, any questions? Yes, Liz.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Seth. This was very nice. I'm the type of person who looks at the Brattleboro website to find out whether it's an A week or a B week for trash.
Yes.
But I do have a question about, has each department head sat with you and reviewed the content of their page and make sure that it was accurate?
Yep. So I've been going back and forth with department heads. I still need to meet with the finance director and with John Potter just for the final go-ahead. That is in the works.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Other board members? Danny.
Could the Selectboard get the opportunity to experience the Selectboard part of the website?
Sure.
I mean, I honestly go to our website all the time to look at documents and whatnot and feel like I know what's wrong with our website, and so I'd like to see if those things have been fixed.
Sure.
John. I would just suggest that select board members reach out directly to Seth if you want to go over anything that you see there that you'd like to
email
have
you
changed.
just now. So.
Yeah, great. Okay, Franz?
Just wondering about any security issues. What are there things that you have to do to prevent bad people from doing bad things to our new website, and how do you approach that?
So Edgeworks, who will be monitoring the site, that's going to be hosted on Cloudflare. So it's a third party, basically. It's a web portal that will be where the website will be hosted. And that does have security protocols in place. So that's they are basically on top of that, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Franz.
Does it require a steady diet of PDFs like the current site?
We do have a very steady diet. I think we ended up with about 5,000 PDFs, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That should keep you busy.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good reading there, Clark.
To that end, though, it is, so we're using Google Drive to help organize the website. So moving forward, it is a lot easier to actually find what you're looking for.
Nice.
Just because it's collapsible folders. So for instance, with the Selectboard, I have it set up so that 2023 is its own folder, which will open up, and then all of the older material is beneath.
Nice. Okay, great.
Just two things for me. One, I've really been sort of speaking to this the whole way through, that the website's going to look beautiful and perfect on November 8th. And what's really important is what it looks like on December 8th, on January 8th, right? And so what I'm hoping to hear from you just briefly is, with the work that you've been doing and as we're nearing launch, are you feeling confident in your capacity in your department, or however you're sort of organizing that, the keeping it fresh and keeping it up to date, keeping it accurate, are you feeling like you're confident in that moving forward?
I do, yeah. I think especially initially, a lot of it will be feeding the website press releases that are coming from out of town. So I think that'll be a great source of content moving forward. And also just constant communication with department heads just to make sure things are accurate as they want to update the website. So yes, I do think that that's something I'll be looking for as I move forward with the website.
Excellent. And I think the only other thing was, would you be willing to come to the first select board meeting that the new site's up, and maybe even just use the time in my chair remarks to just do a shared screen and show people how to access the select board backup material?
Sure.
And maybe just take a couple minutes, but I think it's really a great opportunity to showcase it. And then also, I really want to make sure people are able to access the meeting material for that meeting, because it will be the first one with the new website. So
yeah, that was part of the impetus behind the launch date, actually, was that I just wanted to make sure it was after a select board meeting just so that it wouldn't cause confusion.
Yes.
So yes, that would be great.
Perfect. Okay. And then I will turn it over to the public. Don't see any hands in the room. And I see Gary Stroud in the Zoom.
I'd like to say, Seth, that is a great presentation PowerPoint that you did. I'm looking forward to seeing the new 5.0 website. I guess 3 questions I have. One is, now that we have new people coming from here from Ethiopia and Afghanistan, does it have any type of Google translation? And 2, is it compatible with the new software systems that are coming out, like the new iPhones? People like to go on the iPhone 15. And also, do you have any tutorials so people could help navigate? Because there's a lot of seniors that have issues of getting on. And will you be cleaning up a lot of the, I guess, on a lot of the committees, the agendas and minutes, and how will you be able to clean up those documents that are on there? Will that also be incorporated and integrated along with the system once you flip it over?
Great. Thank you, Gary. Seth, do you feel confident speaking on those?
Yeah. Google Translate, will the website have it? I don't think it will. When I asked Edgeworks about Google Translate, they said that a lot of the functionality behind that is better handled by the person's browser these days. That's kind of the more modern approach. And so someone, if they were to adjust for instance, like if you were to search for the Louvre right now, in France, it would kind of auto-translate that because it identifies, or it's likely that your computer itself has English as the primary setting. So if those settings have been set up in the browser, then that should translate from there. And that was kind of perceived as sort of the better option, just because Google Translate is kind of known for being a bit rough in terms of how it translates. In terms of the iPhone, yeah, this website was built to be responsive, and so it should function on any phone or tablet that's out there. Again, if people have issues with that, please let me know, because I'm sure Edgeworks could address that. In terms of general education, like I said, I really want to make sure that there's a video that goes along with the launch that would kind of just provide a tour. My idea was that if I record my screen, especially, and I'm actually like moving the mouse around and clicking on things, that might be easier for folks to understand, rather than trying to like have a written set of rules. So I guess that was my thought there. And in terms of the documents in general and how we've been using them, I think that there are a couple options out there for folks, especially for phone users. If you're using your phone as your primary source to access the internet, there are a lot of PDF readers. Like I know Acrobat has a really great one that can help you not just with our website, but any website. Read PDFs, fill out forms, that kind of thing. So that's an option that we have. And in terms of all of these 5,000 PDFs, I've been thinking a lot about Google Docs in general. We do have Google functionality with this website, and Docs and Google they do have their own accessibility features. So that might be something to consider moving forward, is that rather than just having PDFs, to also have a Google Doc version, because that might be easier for folks to view on their phone. I hope that answered your questions, Gary.
I think that definitely does. Thank you very much for that answer, Seth. I don't see any other hands on Zoom. I don't see other hands from the select board. So actually, I had one other very quick thought, which was just, I think when it comes to how we present documents on the website, a good opportunity might be when we're preparing for representative town meeting. We kind of have a captive audience of representatives who are very engaged and are going to let us know if they have issues accessing stuff. Plus, we'll provide things in paper format anyways, like we always do. So if we're looking for ways to sort of, especially because we're presenting a lot of material for those individuals, that might be a good time to try and put out information in a way that's more accessible and easier to navigate for all of that information that we're presenting. So just something to think about. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but yeah. I think with that, there's no motion here. It was just a presentation. So really appreciate the presentation again, Seth, and we're really looking forward to the 8th. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited about the launch.
Thank you,
Great.
Seth.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to new business agenda item 8C, which is the Winter Road Sand, a potential approval of a bid for $17.50 per cubic yard.
And we have Dan Tyler on the screen. He will step us through this a bit and then look for a motion on sand.
Great.
Thank you. It's that time of year, winter road sand. So we put out a request for bids. We request a price for both the road sand delivered and an option for us to pick up the road sand. On average, we use about 3,000 cubic yards of sand a season. So we received 2 bids, Zaluzny Excavating and Mitchell Materials. Both provided a price for delivered per cubic yard and picked up. From there, we take those prices and really look at the cost, what it would cost us to pick up the sand. Compare the distance of travel for the trucks, approximate the cost per trip based on fuel mileage, labor costs, and whatnot to really come up with a real price for us to pick up the sand ourselves. The last 2 years, we've done it that way. We've picked up the sand because that's been the favorable option. This year, after comparing the prices, the picked up price from Zaluzny Excavating was $54,147, and the delivered price was $52,500. So there's a slight savings to have them deliver the sand. This year, the prices for us to pick the sand up were slightly higher than last year, and the delivery costs were actually down slightly from last year. So the preferred method for us is to have it delivered. If we're to pick it up, it's dedicated trucks for a couple weeks' time to get it all to the pit, and that just takes the drivers away from other projects that we could accomplish in the fall. So with that, we'd recommend the delivered price from Zaluzny Excavating for $52,500.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan, for that presentation. I see a quick hand from Franz right off the bat.
Why don't you take Liz first?
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, thank you. It's like the first motion we've had tonight, basically. So I would take a motion from a board member.
I'll make a motion, then I'll address.
And then you'll speak to it first, as is your...
Yes. Moving right along. I move to award the FY24 winter sand bid to Zaluzny Excavating for the delivered price of $17.50 per cubic yard.
Excellent. Liz has made a motion, and she will speak to the item first.
And Dan, I just wanted to thank you for making this calculation to see the difference between the delivered and the picked up. It's kind of fascinating for us town nerds, so thank you.
Welcome.
Franz?
Yeah, I think it's a little hard, at least for me, maybe for others, to visualize 3,000 cubic yards of sand. So I was wondering, have you done the calculation for how many sandboxes that would fill?
About 10 cubic yards per dump truck load. So it's a lot of sandboxes.
A lot of sandboxes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Franz. Any other board members?
Yes, Peter. I just like that it's a local company right in our own backyard that we're using. I like that part. That's my favorite.
Okay, thanks, Peter. All right, and I look to the public. I don't see any hands on Zoom or in the room. So in that case, there was a motion from Liz to award the FY24 winter sand bid to Zaluzny Excavating for the delivered price of $17.50 per cubic yard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is going to carry 5-0. Thank you so much, Dan, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 8D, which is the Melrose Street layout discussion. And I'm going to look to John first.
And we have Planning Director Sue Fillion on the Zoom. We can bring her up. There she is. And Sue's going to step us through this Melrose Street layout item, and we will be looking for 2 motions on this.
Understood.
Yep. All right.
Double motion. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So as part of the floodplain restoration at Melrose Terrace, there's been a realignment of Melrose Street. And so Melrose Street is a Class 3 town highway, so it requires some action by the select board to kind of lay out this new configuration of the roadway. Back in 2022, the town signed a development agreement with Brattleboro Housing Authority that basically said once it was constructed and constructed to our standards that we would take over the road. And also there's some utilities in there too, water lines, sewer lines, stormwater infrastructure. I had a meeting with town attorney Bob Fisher to go over the process to lay out the new road. And it requires the select board to basically make a motion that you're going to alter the roadway, and then also to conduct a site visit. And so that's what I'm here asking for you to do tonight, is to set the date and the time of the site visit, which has to be at least 30 days, because under statute, we have to give some notifications to the public in the newspaper and to abutting property owners. So the first step is tonight, and then in 30 plus days, you would do a site visit and have the public hearing, and then you could make a decision at that point as to whether or not you were going to alter layout and establish the new roadway.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sue. Well, I have a question on procedure here. So we're actually going to make a motion to actually discontinue now before we would do the site visit. Seems interesting to me, unless I'm misreading the back of the
Sue, can you explain why we would make that motion now?
I can't explain why you make that motion, How. I'm sorry. I did look at previous road actions. I think it's to kind of open the discussion of it and to be able to set that public hearing. Bob did review the motions and signed off on them. I'm sorry, I can't give you more than that. We'd have to check in with him.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I sort of see, so we do this now, it starts the process, and then there's 2 public hearings, and then it closes out after we do the site visit.
Yeah.
It essentially announces the public hearing.
Sort of. And it also sets the timeline for setting the site visit as well. So, okay. So in that case, board, I realize that's a little confusing, but I would take can we have a little discussion before we have the motion on dates? I think might be helpful.
I'd love to on a date.
So today is October 3rd. So the earliest we could do this would be November 4th. Not saying that's the day we should do it, but just that's
the earliest or the latest?
The earliest. We need to give at least 30 days
okay, I misunderstood
for the site visit. Right. No, it's not super clear.
It'd be November 2nd, I think.
No.
Just what I think.
Let's start
Oh,
with the
you're
week
right.
of the
Because
6th.
of the
How about that?
31 days in October.
You're right. You're right. So it'd be November. So it could be, yeah. So it could be the end of the first week of November or anytime after that. Sorry, Daniel. What was that?
How about we take a look at the week of the 6th?
Okay. The 7th is a select board meeting.
So you could do it the afternoon before your meeting on the 7th.
That makes a lot of sense.
A site visit is a select board meeting, or it is its own entity.
No, and as opposed to doing it in front.
Well, we will warn the site visit
As its own.
It's its
sort
own
of-
public hearing.
I can't remember. Okay. Yeah. How does that work for other board members? So it would be in the maybe mid-afternoon, early afternoon of the 7th of November.
While it's still light out.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Yeah, sure.
Franz?
Sure. Maybe not so early. I don't know. Like,
got the 23rd off.
3?
3 should do it. Because it won't get dark until 4.
Yeah. I'm just going to check my calendar really quickly. This has got to be thrilling for the public to watch us calendar.
It's election day according to,
according to my
my
thing too,
calendar.
so.
Yeah.
Maybe my boss is watching and she could take a look at my work calendar.
That's what I was just thinking.
You know.
We could set a tentative date.
Yeah.
Well,
actually, if we do it on the
I just want to grab my
daylight
one
savings ends on the 5th, so we would actually have an extra hour.
Oh, brilliant.
theoretically.
Maybe we should push it to 4 then.
Okay. Let's do, actually, that would be better for me if we could do 4. So that would give us a couple of hours before the select board meeting, which probably would be sufficient time to do the site visit. So can I get a motion that would incorporate 4 p.m. on November 7th?
Oh, motion.
Great.
All right, so to discontinue a part of Melrose Street and to alter layout and establish a new location of Melrose Place, to conduct a site visit on November 7th, to be convened at 4 p.m., with the public hearing to follow thereafter, the conclusion of the site visit at the Select Board meeting room.
There's been a motion, and now we can have some discussion. Thank you, Peter. My first one is, does the public hearing need to be on that select board meeting of the 7th? The language of this motion sort of makes it sound like it does need to be.
Sue, do you know the answer to that?
It always has in the past been, but so I.
It probably, yes. Do we feel okay, confident that that's okay for us to have that public hearing happen on the 7th? Just based on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick?
I've been to a half a dozen of these maybe over the years, and every time the board has met on site and then reconvened back here at the select board meeting room. So if that's.
And then do they do the public hearing at that meeting? That's kind of, I was just wanted to check. We sort of landed on a select board meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that meeting was okay to also have the public hearing. Like if we didn't have anything else like big planned for that night, that would.
Just lots of things.
Lots of things will be up, of course. Okay, we'll just work it in. Great. All right. Excellent. Any other discussion on? I mean, it sounds like the logistics are. Daniel's giving me some looks.
So I don't think there's any meaningful election happening in Brattleboro on November 7th.
Because of our sort of.
We have sort of had a practice recently of not meeting on those days to allow people to.
I don't think there is an election for us, not locally.
I mean, as part of the Board of Civil Authority, I think I would.
You probably know about it, right?
I don't think there's anything.
Is there a presidential election or anything? No.
That would be next year.
That's later. That's coming
Actually,
soon.
a year later.
Is it a year later? Wow. I guess I'll just get there early.
Probably a line. So, Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion from the board? We've got at least one hand on the public. Yes.
I just want to mention, and I'm sure Sue's aware, that this process about the flooding at Melrose Terrace has been going on since Tropical Storm Irene. And just give you an idea of the planning process being an extensive one.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah. So with that, I'll turn it over to the public, and I see one hand far.
Hello again. Thank you. Farm East District 9. And also maybe for the purposes of this conversation, chair the Brattleboro Conservation Commission. I'm excited about the prospect of the town abandoning a road. I would love to see more of that. All for the reclamation of natural areas from roads. One thing it's maybe not a concern, just a question. What does at what point would we actually be committed, or would we be committed in any way to the alignment that's represented in the design drawings that are in the backup materials? The reason I ask is that I noticed the design drawings are from February of this year, and conditions since July 10th or 11th, the big flooding event that happened then, it's clear that erosion is much more extensive than is represented in those drawings, and some parts of that road have been undermined by that erosion. And there's also some issues with some of the riprap swales. So yeah, I'm not a civil engineer, so I don't know how all that works, but I'm just curious if any of these decisions commit the town or BHA to those particular design plans.
Great question, Far. Thank you for that. Sue, I'll turn to you on, the question sort of twofold. How committed are we to the site plan that was presented in the backup material, and has it taken into consideration the impact of the flooding in July?
Yeah, so, the design for the roadway came with the initial development review board approval of the floodplain restoration and the demolition of the buildings there. And it, aligned with the existing bridge and then serving the remaining buildings. I think at this point it would probably be, the location of the road and the way it works through the property was figured into all the floodplain calculations. I think that it could be revisited, but it has been constructed at this point. It did receive damage in the July flooding, and that is BHA is working with the local contractor and expecting the roadway to be repaired either this week or next week. So that will be repaired. Public Works has been out there and they've seen it as well. So I think by setting this public hearing and the site visit, you're not committing to it. So if you go out there and you see something, those are conversations that we could have with the engineers that BHA has been working with.
Great, thank you very much, Sue. And my understanding from your memo is that the old roadway has been discontinued already, so it's not actively being used right now, right? So even though it hasn't formally been closed by the town, the residents kind of at least have a sense, who live there have a sense for what it's like with the new layout.
Correct. It's been they constructed it at some point last year, so it's been like this for some time. They weren't able. I think the delay was in getting a surveyor to get out there and finish the work.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, I think that'll be useful information as well for the public hearing. We'll hear from people who are actually utilizing it in the new way for when the board's considering it. So I don't see any other hands in Zoom, no other hands in the room, and I'm just looking to the select board. In that case, so there's been a motion to conduct,
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Franz.
So, what's the purpose of the public hearing if we have already voted to accomplish the?
Sue just addressed that. We don't have to go through with it after the public hearing.
Okay, so then why are we voting on it now?
That was kind of my question.
Well, I know, but I'm just kind of getting caught up here, and it just seems strange to be voting on something that doesn't count until the public hearing.
So the process is described in the memo, and I believe you have to approve the acceptance of the roadway after the hearing date in its final.
So there'll be another motion at that time that'll actually do what we're talking about.
That was my understanding, unless
Okay.
Sue has
As long as we're sure that it's just.
I mean, the board's gonna need to find that.
Let's not have two. Let's just have Sue here, and then we'll hear from Patrick. Sorry, Sue.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, yes, there will be a motion at the public hearing on November 7th.
Patrick, sorry.
Yeah, from previous instances of this type of action, I know that the board needs to make a finding following the site visit, that it's in the public good, public convenience, and public necessity that such actions be taken. And I don't fully pretend to understand what that means, but I know that's what Bob's going to tell you post site visit. And we'll make sure and have him there so that any questions or concerns
We should probably have Bob there.
be addressed.
Thanks. Does that satisfy you, good doctor?
Sure.
In that case, so there's been a motion to discontinue a part of the Melrose Street and to alter layout and establish a new location of Melrose Street, and also to conduct a site visit on November 7th to be convened at 4 p.m. with a public hearing to follow thereafter after conclusion of the site visit at the Select Board meeting room. So board members, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sue and Patrick, also for walking us through that procedural situation. And we're going to move on to, I think, our last agenda item for the evening.
Penultimate.
Oh, penultimate? Oh, because we got committee. Okay, so we're going to move on to a new business agenda item 8E, which is the Windham South. Yes, thank you for that, Peter. Appreciate that. Appreciate you. Windham Southeast School District Board consultation. And we have a representative from the Windham Southeast School District Board, Robin Morgan, which I wanted to apologize. We're later than was anticipated on the agenda. If you want to come up and sit at the table, you're more than welcome.
I don't have anything to present.
No problem.
As a representative of the board.
Yes. Well, we appreciate you being here. And so it's the reason we're here this evening is an element of Vermont statutes 16 VSA 731 that when there's a vacancy on a unified union school district board, there's an appointment made of applicants, and that appointment is made by the sitting school board, but in consultation with the select board of the town. So there's not really a lot of definition as to what consultation means. We've done this twice now, I believe, and both times we've just sort of taken in the information you've provided and then sort of wished you the best of luck in your making your appointment. But I open this conversation up to the select board if they do have anything they wish to say. But I just like to explain procedurally why we almost never have these bodies speak to each other. So yeah, select board. Liz.
Thank you for the opportunity to consult. I have no comment.
Fair. Any other board members?
Welcome, school board representative, and thanks for being here in accordance with the statutory requirement.
Thanks for having me.
Pick a good one.
And I would say, looks like you have some really good applicants, and it's got to be a tough decision. And mostly, I just appreciate the work of yourself and the rest of your board and whoever you pick. You really provide a service for our community, and we all sit on a public body, and we at least have a sense for the time and commitment that takes. And so, thank you for the work you do.
Likewise.
And with that, I don't think there's any motion or anything. So,
Okay.
thanks so much.
For your recommendations.
Yeah.
Great. So we're going to move on to new business agenda item 8F, which is to announce committee vacancies. And I feel like I should probably do that. Thank you very much. So I'm going to read them out, and then I'm going to ask how people apply for it. Okay, so we have 7 vacancies in the Agricultural Advisory Board. We have 4 vacancies in the ADA Advisory Committee. We have 2 vacancies in the Arts Committee. We have 1 vacancy in the Cemetery Committee. We have 1 vacancy in the Citizens Police Communications Committee. We have 1 vacancy in the Design Review Committee as an alternate position. We have 1 vacancy as an alternate for the Developmental Review Board. We've got 1 vacancy on the Energy Committee. We have 3 vacancies on the Fence Viewers, 3 vacancies on the Honor Roll, 1 vacancy on the Inspector of Lumber, Shingles, and Wood. I'm apologizing to our interpreters. 1 vacancy for Planning Commission, 1 vacancy for the Rec and Parks Board, 1 vacancy for the Senior Solutions Advisory Council, and finally 1 or 2 vacancies on the Weir of Coal. And if there were a member of the public who one of these piqued their interest, John, how would they go about submitting an application?
Yes, Ian, they would reach out to Executive Assistant Jessica Stickler in the Town Manager's office, and she can be reached at jstickler, STICKLOR, @brattleboro.org. And also, there's information on the website, so they can go to brattleboro.org and look for information.
And
if committees,
and as I was saying, is that there's information about the committees themselves on the website. So if you saw one of these and you thought, wow, that's interesting, but I have no idea what that does, then you could find information on the website. You also could call the town manager's office, or you could reach out to one of your local Brattleboro Select Board members, and maybe they could give you some information.
We could pick it up too.
So with that, I think that's the end of new business. So there's just one more motion to be made. Liz?
I move to adjourn.
Liz made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much. Thanks to BCTV. Thank you to our interpreters. Thank you, Patrick, for running the computer. And thanks to all the people who came out tonight.
You're welcome.
Brattleboro.
They went
taking
home.
over. It's taking over.